This is America's Roundtable. Visit us at americasrt.com. Follow us on Twitter at americasrt. You can find us on YouTube and Facebook. Like and share. This is America's Roundtable from Washington, D.C., a weekly radio program with leading voices from America and international thinkers representing the academia, business, media, think tanks, and the political arena. I am Joel Anand-Samy, your co-host, joined by Natasha Sardoj, an economist and co-founder of the International Leaders Summit and the Adriatic Institute for Public Policy. For our listeners who have just joined us on America's Roundtable, David Ramadan is a Republican and was elected to the Virginia House of Delegates in November of 2011, and he serves on two committees, Privileges and Election and Science and Technology. In fact, David, you mentioned about the Republican candidates, Governor Romney and also Paul Ryan and the host of individuals vying for seats across America. There has been a sentiment among voters that were very concerned about the fact that the Republicans perhaps moved away from the focus, say, for example, the modern conservative movement through Ronald Reagan, who basically implemented reforms and reached across the aisle with very staunch Democrats, including Tip O'Neill, who was a House Speaker at that time, and forged a bipartisan plan on tax reform and a number of other issues that actually worked on growing the economy. Now, in the past decade, some would certainly beg to differ that the Republican Party certainly in certain areas lost its way and increased government spending and began to take upon issues which were perhaps not within the umbrella of what you would consider a center-right party. And what can independent voters take away from the message of Governor Romney, which, this was something that he communicated at the most recent presidential debate on the way forward and what is the Republican Party and the conservatives going to do about addressing some of these issues, and what is the trust level at this stage?
The trust level is there. The Republican Party has not lost its way. We might have had individuals, and we can't argue with facts, we might have had some individuals, and we did, that have taken the pressures of realities at the time and caved to changing their way and what they believed in, and ended up caving to increasing taxes and an incredible amount of spending. We have in Governor Romney a individual who has done it and proved it as a governor of his state. He ran as a Republican in a state that was governed by a majority Democrat in their legislature, and he proved that he could work across the aisle. They worked hard together. He certainly found a middle ground that benefited his state. However, he didn't compromise on his values, and he didn't compromise on his Republican principles. So I am confident that Governor Romney, once he's president-elect on November 7th, not even till January, will start working and reaching across the aisle so he can find practical solutions for America today without compromising any of our basic principles. And as he promised in his campaigns, he will not raise taxes and he will cut the spending. And the way to do it is by cutting taxes, and the way to do it is by incentivizing the private market and by creating jobs, and that's how the bigger pool of income will come in, and by cutting every program that is not useful. If you remember in one of the debates, he was asked, what particular program will you cut? And he said, it will be a very simple rule. If I have to borrow from China for it, then it's not worth it. So we will see in President Romney a president that can cut, that will cut all the unnecessary programs of the federal government. He will cut taxes. He will incentivize the private market, and we will see prosperity and growth in America as it should be, and back on the track towards the Ronald Reagan America that we all love.
Exactly, and also with his track record in balancing the budget, not only in public sector, but also in private sector. I mean, he's a perfect candidate for this time.
Absolutely. You know, I want in my president somebody who had opened businesses, who had dealt with the challenges of businesses, somebody who had fired and hired, somebody who knows when to cut and when to hire, somebody who had written a payroll and signed a payroll week after week after week. I want a president who has experienced it. I want a president who is a CEO that achieved incredible amounts of wealth, because I want him to achieve that wealth for the United States. You know, since when was capitalism a bad thing in America? It wasn't, and it shouldn't. And it should continue to be a good thing to be able to create more wealth for all in the United States of America.
David, I just wanted to ask you a question regarding an issue that you've taken up for Virginia. And you mentioned with record spending in the public schools, a lack of money should no longer be used as the excuse for poor test grades and proper preparation. You're talking about education. You're also a great proponent of homeschooling. What would it take for Virginia to adopt the voucher program for education, whereby the money would follow the child? It would be directly paid to families with children who would choose the school or to be homeschooled.
Absolutely. It's very important. Everything starts with education. We are competing today worldwide with education systems around the world that are concentrated on results, not on effort. And that should be our concentration. We unfortunately have a 10-year system in the United States that I firmly disagree with. There should be no job for life for anybody on any or in any industry, specifically in education. Why would we want to keep bad teachers and bad performers in classrooms where our children depends on them for their future? Now, we have great teachers in Virginia, and the majority of the teachers are wonderful, and the majority of them are great performers, but we shouldn't keep that 10-year system. We attempted to reform the 10-year system this year in the state of Virginia. We passed it through the House. However, unfortunately, it did not pass through the Senate. We'll continue to have that challenge. As you know, the Senate in Virginia is divided as 2020, and we have held a K-12 summit that the governor organized in Richmond a few weeks ago. It included several reformers from around the nation. It included several politicians that believe in K-12 reform, including our governor, of course, Governor Jindal from Louisiana, former Governor Doug Wilder of Virginia, and former Governor Wise from West Virginia, all of whom had talked about the importance of reforming K-12. K-12 reform means that we look at results, that we incentivize teachers that do the good job, and that we make sure that we redirect teachers that don't do the job that they're supposed to do to a different career in life.
Right.
That will include a choice for our families that pay taxes and pay for the school system to send their kids where they want to send their kids. So vouchers are very important as part of that. And for those that decide they want to homeschool, they can homeschool their children. Now, I also believe that those that decide to homeschool their children can and should be allowed to participate in activities at their local schools. Athletics for homeschoolers is something very important. I have a family in my neighborhood in South Riding, the Foss family, whose son Patrick is ranked number 10 in soccer in the United States, but couldn't play with his local high school. Patty's a fantastic young individual and would have done very well for our local high school if he was allowed to play. People like him around the nation are not participating in local activities in their schools, and whether that's sports or drama or music, if they choose to homeschool their kids, they still pay taxes, they still pay their fair share of those school systems, and they should be allowed to use and interact with their neighbors and friends through the activities in the school system.
And David, at this stage, I'd like to just shift our focus to the Middle East and North Africa, where a number of troubling events have surfaced. And in fact, just this past week's New York Times report on Friday mentioned about Benghazi, Libya, and I quote David Kirkpatrick, who writes, "Witnesses and the authorities have called Ahmed Abu Khattala one of the ringleaders of the September 11 attack on the American diplomatic mission here. But just days after President Obama reasserted his vow to bring those responsible to justice, Mr. Abu Khattala spent 2 leisurely hours on Thursday evening at a crowded luxury hotel, sipping a strawberry frappe on a patio and scoffing at the threats coming from the American and Libyan governments. Libya's fledgling army is a national chicken, and that is the report in David Kirkpatrick's writing. He states, Mr. Abu Khattala said, using an Arabic rhyme, asked who should take responsibility for apprehending the mission's attackers, he smirked at the idea that the weak Libyan government could do anything, and he accused the leaders of the U.S. of playing with the emotions of the American people and using the consulate attack just to gather votes for the elections. Now, we received mixed reports after the attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi. And what are your thoughts from your experiences and interactions with those that are closely connected and observing the issues in North Africa as well as the Middle East?
There are no mixed reports, Joel. There is an absolute failure by this administration of protecting this embassy, and there was an absolute scandal of trying to cover up an act of terror. I am appalled by what happened. You know, where are the days of Reagan when after a disco bombing in Germany, our F-16s were showing Libya and showing Gaddafi that you don't mess with Americans? We had an ambassador who was killed, a consulate that was burned, his body was missing for 8 hours, and our president went to bed, woke up in the morning, canceled the security briefing, got on a plane, and went to Las Vegas for a fundraiser. That's appalling. That is absolutely appalling, and that is offensive. And no, Mr. President, that's what's offensive to America, not when somebody accuses you of playing politics. You did play politics with that one. For 5 days, for 2 weeks, this administration went out and kept saying and blaming this on a video when they knew very well that this was a terror attack, that this was an act of war against the United States. You know, Joel, we lost the love with the Middle East a long time ago. I can live with that. We lost respect several years ago. I can also live with that. But we have now lost power and fear, and I can't live with that. If the world doesn't love us, we'll be all right. We can still make it. If the world doesn't respect us, I don't like it, but we still are America, whether they like it or not. But the world doesn't fear us. That's dangerous. And that's what happens under the Barack Obama administration. And that is absolutely unacceptable in my mind. Today, nothing has yet to happen. Our FBI didn't go on the ground for weeks after the attack. The diary of our American ambassador was found by a reporter who was on the ground at the embassy, a crime scene and a terror scene, instead of being secured by our Marines. This ambassador has requested security. He had written in his diary that he is in danger. They have cabled to the State Department, and no, he heard nothing but the word no from our embassy, from our State Department. And why was that? Because they didn't want to look bad. They wanted to claim a victory. Now, if that's not politics, I don't know what is.
David, in fact, as we look at next week's presidential debate, which will be the last of 3 debates taking place in Florida, and it will be focusing on foreign policy. Now, if you were sitting next to Governor Romney, and as you had met him this past week in Virginia, what would you share with Governor Romney to bring up during that debate? And what would be very important for America's voters, both, I would say, in fact, Republican, Democrat, and independent voters that are out there?
I'll share with Governor Romney what he already knows and what he already spoke about. He really doesn't need me to share this with him, so I share this belief with him versus having to share this advice. I'll share with him that America needs to be strong, that our embassies around the world needs to be protected, that his vision would be that he will protect these embassies, that he will give them all the resources that they need, that he will not play politics with American foreign policy, that America, or a strong America around the world, is a defender of democracy. And that is something that is not only essential for our citizens and our survivability, which is the job of the U.S. president, but that's also essential for a world order today that depends on us to be strong and to lead, something that this current president has not done. So that is the message that I am sure Governor Romney will relay, and that is the message that I am sure all of the citizens of the United States that are not looking at this from a partisan point of view, that whether they like President Obama or not, they know in their heart, they know in their mind, whether they admit it or not, that he had failed on foreign policy. And that is the message they want to hear from Governor Romney in the next debate.
And in fact, David, on this particular subject here, I would just like to ask you for your closing thoughts. And in fact, specifically, if any issue that you're working on in Richmond that would be of interest to our listeners across America.
Joel, we live in a dangerous world. We live in a world that will continue to attack us, whether on our home ground or abroad. As we all saw on the news in the past few days, there was an FBI. The FBI thwarted a terrorist attack in New York City that was targeting the Federal Reserve in Lower Manhattan. As we are taping this particular radio program, we have learned that a car bomb in Lebanon assassinated General Wissam al-Hassan, who is the general in charge of the internal security of Beirut. He has been a general who has worked with the West on catching terrorists in Lebanon, and it cost him his life. We live in a world where a war of terror is a reality, or the war on terror, is a reality. We have to deal with that. We have to continue to do that. We have to be vigilant, and we need to keep that in our thoughts. It doesn't mean our life changes. We continue on. We live our days. We live our lives. We plan for the future. We entertain. We live it up. But yet we never forget that we have men and women serving our nation all around the world that are in danger every day, and they're putting their lives out there to continue to give us the opportunity and the protection so that we can live our daily lives, so that we can legislate in Virginia, so that we can participate, so that we can enjoy our concerts, and so that our children can live within a democratic nation that gives them the opportunities that our Constitution has afforded us.
Thank you, David Ramadan, for joining us on America's Roundtable this weekend. And for those of you who have been listening to the comments relayed by David, David Ramadan is a Republican and was elected to the Virginia House of Delegates in November 2011. An inspiring and very unique story of how a young student from Beirut, Lebanon, came to America seeking the American dream and has had an extraordinary experience in living in America as an entrepreneur, as an adjunct professor at the George Mason University, and contributing to America's well-being. Thank you, David, for joining us, and we wish you the best in your endeavors.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. Thank you both. It's been an honor and a pleasure to be on your radio show.
Our host at America's Roundtable would like to take this moment to encourage each one of you to carefully review the issues we face as a nation and make sure you vote on November 6. One of the founding fathers of America, John Jay, stated, "The Americans are the first people whom heaven has favored with an opportunity of deliberating upon and choosing the forms of government under which they should live." This is America's Roundtable. Visit us at americasrt.com. Follow us on Twitter at americasrt. You can find us on YouTube and Facebook. Like and share.